Batman and Lego go together as well as peanut butter and jam, ketchup and mayo.
It's my fancy sauce.
A liberal arts student and a fear of salads. Lego has always done right by Batman and DC in general as far as I'm aware. If there's been a dud, I've missed it. The games have been great, the sets have held the source with reverence and respect. So now with a new game that seems to pay tribute to all the movies and other media that have come before it, it's time to don the cape and cowl once more and leap into the night of Gotham. Can Lego continue their glowing record with the Caped Crusader, or will TT Games need to be taken to Arkham Asylum? I'm TSM, and I finally played Lego Batman: Legacy of the Dark Knight. I'm going to be setting the tone of this video right here, and it's not all that good. Legacy of the Dark Knight is a generic and kind of weak Batman game that relies heavily on cheap nostalgia and borderline plagiarization of previous movies and games from at least over a decade ago. With the exception of a couple of nods that I found pretty cool, segments are copy and pasted with a Lego filter slapped over it. Where the Lego games based directly on the movies took what was filmed and had a lot of fun with it, Legacy has little to no imagination in its execution. Legacy of the Dark Knight is set across multiple stories that each steal more than borrow from previous Batman series like Nolan, Burton, or Schumacher. Some scenes taken directly as they were with no hint of even trying to hide it. What sucks is that Legacy of the Dark Knight is actually pretty good when it isn't thieving from itself, and for a game that was marketed as taking inspiration and paying tribute, just outright copying is not a good look. So was there anything I actually liked about this game? Yeah, sure, there were a few things, but unfortunately it's all overshadowed by just the general experience overall. Okay, for starters, it looks great. It's one of the better individual looking Lego games. The minifigures themselves are done very well, and the overall style of the world is something to be appreciated. Next, I'd say the selection of costumes, styles, the different bikes and the different Batmobiles, it's very expansive. One of the things that basing a Batman game on previous media does is let you have access to a load of really cool stuff. The music also gets a shout out. It's always nice to hear scores and reorchestrated segments from previous Batman products. I won't mark this down as a copy from somewhere else, as all the Lego Batman games have done this in one way or another, and I'd be a hypocrite to critique it here and just completely ignore the fact that the others did exactly the same. And like I said, the original moments are where the game is at its best, with some story moments really being quite sweet. The voice acting itself is alright, the guy who voices Batman does a decent job, and there is a noticeable switch between Batman and Bruce Wayne. Nightwing is lively and pretty funny, Talia and Catwoman are seductive and feminine, Batgirl is a bit annoying, but we'll gloss over that. Unfortunately, that's kind of where my likes for this game end. There are other things that I did like, as previously mentioned. There were a few nods that I found to be pretty awesome, and the chase segment from The Dark Knight was fire as hell, but I need to look at this from the perspective of the age demographic that it's being aimed for. I know the argument is that, oh, it's for Batman fans, but no. There are some things here that are just going to fly over younger players' heads. The intro to Arkham Asylum, for example. I liked it, but kids aren't going to know what the hell this is for. They're going to get bored instead of appreciating a nod to an awesome trilogy. As previously mentioned, there's the Tumblr chase from The Dark Knight. We've got Mr. Freeze icing up all of Gotham from Batman and Robin, Bane breaking Batman's back from The Dark Knight Rises, a load of nods that many younger players will not have seen and not understand the context of. Which then begs the question of, if this game was truly made for Batman fans and it's stuffed full of nods to old media that kids won't have seen, why bother making the game for kids in the first place? Then we have all the eras it jumps across and combines with that just gives me tonal and generational whiplash. I've never even heard of generational whiplash. That's not a thing. This is something that I've just invented for this video. So the game starts in Batman Begins, then combines it with half of Burton's Batman 89 and Batman from 2022, which then leads to Nicholson's Joker becoming Ledger's Joker. Then we get the second half of 89 combined with Returns, then a weird mixture of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, then the animated show, then Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. Bold choice to end your game basing it heavily on one of the worst Batman films, by the way. It's so inconsistent that I just got dizzy. Now, with this being a Lego game, surely the comedy is on point. Lego has always had a pretty good record of making their games funny. Unfortunately, not here. The majority of the jokes are placed for cheap laughs if they can even get a chuckle. The majority are just playing on old gripes people had about the movies that they're based on, like all of Mr. Freeze's puns. They fell into this trap with the Lego Incredibles as well. I made a point about this in the Platinum video that I did last year. Just chucking something in somewhere doesn't make it funny. The most egregious example for Legacy of the Dark Knight is the bats taking a dump on Bruce. I get this is a quote-unquote kids game, but that is a weak-ass argument. Even I knew growing up that this kind of joke, probably more than others, requires really good timing. LEGO games used to be funny. Even in the earliest LEGO games to feature voice acting, they still had some pretty good funny moments, but the best games are still the ones that had no voice acting. The early LEGO Star Wars, Harry Potter, Indiana Jones. The first Batman game. Comedy relied on movement and inflection with over-the-top actions to compensate for no voices, and using the given environment to their advantage, but with this one, they just hoped and prayed yet again like they did with The Incredibles and the Skywalker saga. There is an art to the fart, and with shit like this, pun fully intended. Just getting covered in crap in what was quite a serious scene from Batman Begins doesn't add to anything, and it just detracts from the point. Next is the double tutorial. The game starts teaching you all about combat and gameplay, primarily in the League of Assassins segment, then it does it again after the first suit up as Batman. Why do we have this twice? I just learnt all of this less than an hour ago. I'm not that retarded that I need to be taught it all again that fucking quickly. My only guess as to why this is that the game was meant to start with the first suit up. The League of Assassins segment was maybe planned as a flashback later in the game, but then was decided to move it to the start. So tutorials were placed there and they just didn't remove them from the first suit up. I can't confirm that to be true, but that's kind of how it feels. Combat is also a point where the game suffers. It's just button mashing, which, okay, is kind of the same as previous games, but the combat overstays its welcome with seemingly endless waves of enemies with little variety. Counter and dodge timers, flow state, gliding and gadget usage is ripped straight from Arkham without the refinement. Even on the hardest difficulty, it just feels like a slog. I've seen the arguments that say, oh well, the Arkham games were just button mashing, so why do you have a problem? And that is a retarded take. Arkham's mix of hand-to-hand, stealth, gadgets, traversal, and combo upgrades make for one of the most in-depth gameplay loops in gaming, so shut the fuck up. Legacy's combat is like if someone described Arkham's combat to you over the phone. Puzzles also have little wit or reason to them, with some characters being given certain pieces of equipment that are out of character to deal with a puzzle, like Gordon having a pink slime gun that stops gears in machinery. Why does he have a pink slime gun? Is it because guns are too violent now? Even the bad guys' guns don't look and behave like guns. You give them accurate rocket launchers and swords, so why have the guns suffered? This is just another instance of poor design, like the devs constructed the puzzle without looking at who was in it in the base level and needed to work around that by giving out-of-place tech to characters who would have never had anything like this in the first place. It'd be like if there was a Darkseid Force brick in LEGO Star Wars that needed to be broken to progress the level and you gave the power to fucking R2-D2. Next are just general quality of life improvements that need to be fixed, like Batman glitching into the floor of an elevator or the camera shooting forward while riding on a bike. Vehicle controls need to be a bit more responsive, the ability to dive and lift while gliding, and more intuitive grappling points. Why am I flying forwards then grapple completely off course? Then we have the biggest problems I have on a personal level. From what I understand, 24 lead devs from Rocksteady helped work on this game. The same people who did Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. And I need to stress that point. The people that are at Rocksteady now are not the same people that made the Arkham games. So these people love shoving inclusion into their games. Hench people. Not henchman or henchwoman, as is custom for bad guys in comic media. Hench people. People of hench. Then we have Bruce being made the butt of every joke in cutscenes while the woman beside him handles things perfectly. Batgirl just casually upgrading the Batarang and the game making the world's greatest detective look lazy and incompetent. We now have arseloads of wheelchair users in Gotham who can flip out the way of a moving car because I guess LEGO games are just ableist now. Why are we still dealing with this shit and why is it being forced into a kid's game? Devs, you made a conscious decision to do this. Why bother? They can't even call them goons anymore like in the original because the word of that meaning's now gone. Same goes for something else as well. One thing I actually kind of liked in this game is that when you take down enemies, sometimes you'll get a blam or a pow or a boom. You know, classic comics or Adam West Batman. But there was one that I saw that just said chud. Now, I haven't been able to find anything to say that this was used in comics as a replacement to a kapow, smack, or bang, so the devs put chud into this game either because they thought it'd be funny, or they clearly don't know the modern definition of how chud is used by certain people. Going on the rest of the game and who was involved in making it, I think they knew. Right, okay. I feel like I've ranted enough, and to be honest, I'm getting tired here. At the time of recording this video as well, it's fucking hot outside. In the end, LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight feels like a cheap, soulless game. The arguments of it's for Batman fans still mean we need something good and not self-plagiarized, and it's made for kids holds no water owing to previous brilliant LEGO games. It's a generic and shallow attempt to cash in on a beloved superhero using a very popular brand. The concept of this game is brilliant on paper, and at points it does genuinely work. It's in the general execution of the concept where it falls flat and it falls hard. I can't recommend this game. Honestly, I feel robbed. At least with the LEGO Incredibles, I got it on sale for less than a $5. TT Games, you need to take a long hard look at yourselves for this one, because I refuse to believe that the people who gave us both Harry Potter's, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and the original LEGO Batman trilogy could look at this and pat themselves on the back. If you ask me, the marriage of LEGO Batman and TT Games has gone cold.